In the last program, we heard Australian musicians who were familiar with ragtime and who were beginning to learn about jazz through vaudeville or through their own experience overseas. Now we continue with Harold Fraser, who returns from war service to Australia.
Well, now we get back to the situation of jazz in Australia. It was in December 1919 that we came home on the boat, the Iparanga, which was the Kaiser Hind, and we arrived in Sydney and found that whatever jazz there was pretty weak.
Yeah.
And actually there was none at all.
You would have been the first musicians to actually hear the original Dixieland Jazz Band live, I'd say, from Australia.
That's right, yeah. But Eric and I, we went to Mrs. McClurkin, who owned the Wentworth Hotel.
Yes.
The hotel...
Oh, and Eric there was also a fighter pilot.
He was a fighter pilot, yeah. Mrs. McClurkin used to have the dancers, the shotties and the waltz and all that sort of business, on an angle place extended to her hotel. But we went to her and told her that jazz was the thing now, and would she like to entertain on with the jazz or let somebody know what was doing. She says yes, so she invited all her clientele, which were the big people of Sydney then, Hordens and Osborns and those people. And she invited them, and we never had a band then, but we got the old boys together again.
Yeah.
Even Major Wackett came and played the banjolin at once as an exhibition of jazz music to Mr. McClurkin, February 1920.
Yeah.
And they had to vote then whether they'd have a jazz band or Borty Fay, who was the pianist, previous pianist.
Yeah.
At any rate, we found out that she was satisfied, and she drew up a contract, and this is it. And the amount of money we got for the job. At any rate, that's the 6-month contract with Mrs. McClurkin.
Ah.
She built that place.
Oh, that's the Wentworth Ballroom, is it?
That's the Wentworth Ballroom. Now this contract started to operate from the 1st of April 1920. In between the February and there, she built that ballroom outside the hotel. Then we took our professional names and the company as Leslie and Dare. And we not only opened started the musical part of it, but we opened a dancing academy in Sydney also and taught jazz dancing. When the contract terminated, we then built our own show up at Dixieland, Clifton Gardens.
Summer Nights Dancing at Dixieland. Opening night tomorrow, Saturday. The perfect dancing floor, the irresistible music of a famous jazz band, and above all the coolness and beauty of Dixieland Clifton Gardens, held nightly at this harbour fairyland. An illuminated direct steamer will leave number 4 Wharf Circular Quay every evening at 7:42. Other steamers at 7:35, 8:05, and at frequent intervals thereafter. Fast direct service takes dancers back to city. Music by famous Syncopas Jazz Band, late Wentworth Cafe. Admission, 4 shillings. Direction, Leslie and Dare.
From Dixieland in Sydney, Harold Fraser went to Carline's Hotel Esplanade at St Kilda in Melbourne. Ernie Derriman replaced him at Dixieland. Eric Pearce, who was a Sydney dance pianist, saw Ernie Derriman's band in action at Dixieland.
In regard to Dixieland playing, one of the early bands was Ernie Derriman, and he had a band at Dixieland, and it was a good band too. Some of the players he had were in my band later. They used to act the goat on the stage and all that, you'd have trombones doing all sorts of things, and they'd have drummers with gear hanging all around the place, blowing everything, whistles and canary whistles and everything. Yeah. They had an instrument called a slide whistle we used to play beautiful waltzes on. Yeah. But only the little sliding thing inside. Cute.
This approach to playing jazz was typified by American recordings available at the time, such as this one by the Cotton Pickers from 1922, Running Wild. Carl Maiden was a drummer who we met in the first program.
Well, when I come back, I went to America again in 1920, and I was there for 3 years and come back, and I worked in Melbourne. I had the dance band at Carline's Esplanade Hotel in St Kilda. I was there for 4 years.
Had you heard about jazz before you went back to America?
Yes.
And did you sort of set out to acquaint yourself more with jazz?
Yes, I really did, yes. Because I knew that jazz was going to boost in Australia, naturally.
Yes.
But you see, the strange part about it, after doing the jazz work in Melbourne and the dance in St Kilda, I didn't do any more dance work here. It was all theatre work. In 1914 until 1920, I was playing for Fuller's at Waterloo.
And just the same thing as in San Francisco, you accompanied the acts on
Yes,
stage?
same thing exactly.
Yes.
Well, then I wrote to the secretary of the Musicians Union in San Francisco, and I asked him how conditions were for me to come back. And he wrote and told me, all right, things were quite all right to come back. So I arrived there in 1920 in September. Well, right away I got a good job, and the best job I had was travelling with, in those days it was silent pictures, and a picture called Way Down East
Yes.
was the big picture of the year. It was put on by D.W. Griffiths. He made Intolerance and the Birth of a Nation and Way Down East. Well, I got over $80 a week to touring. After I did that tour, I was given a job to go to Sacramento in a vaudeville show again.
Yes.
And a very big acts they had, the best acts. The Marx Brothers, you've heard of the Marx Brothers? Well, they were one of the acts that I played for.
Gee.
I come back to San Francisco and went right into a picture show again, still playing for the silent pictures.
Yes.
So I had all that experience over there again.
When you went back to America the second time, to San Francisco and California,
Yeah.
could you notice the difference in the music? Had jazz developed more?
In dance work it had. At dance work I noticed a big difference.
That was Shake It and Break It by Lennon's Southern Serenaders in 1921, which featured Miff Mole on trombone. This band was the forerunner of the Cotton Pickers and the original Memphis Five.
When I came back and joined the band in Carlines, there was three of us. My brother, who had worked the Carlines before, he joined the gang and he was working in the theatre. He left the theatre and we played. I was made on account from America. I was supposed to be something outstanding, you see,
Yes.
had an American experience. But they used to have big bill posters, the size of this room almost, of the photograph of the Carlines band and Carl Maiden conductor.
Dancing nightly, Carlyon's famous Ballroom Deluxe, St Kilda, to the strains of Australia's premier orchestra. In reference to Carlyon's famous players, Mr. Carlyon has been very fortunate in securing the services of such talented musicians. Previous to his appointment here, Mr. Carl Maiden, the conductor, had just finished a long season in America with J.D. Griffith, famous in the picture world. Mr. Van Dyke's name is a byword in the music business, and he's well known as one of Frisco's best players. Mr. Harry Maiden was solo player with the San Francisco Symphony Orchestra, also playing with some of the best Frisco jazz bands. Mr. Roy J. Baird has had the opportunity of playing in London with some of England's best dance orchestras during his recent visit to Europe. Mr. E. Pettifer, although an Australian, is recognised as a genius on his instrument and has always held a leading position in the best theatres in Melbourne until taking up the saxophone for the great demand in jazz. Jack Wood is called the man of versatility, owing to the numerous instruments he has mastered. Stuart McElraith is well known as the Heifetz of modern ballroom dancing. He has made a close study of Paul Whiteman, the world-famous conductor. Mr. Squires, who is Mr. Carlyon's latest importation, has put the finishing touch on the very fine combination of musicians. His banjo playing is just what one listens for, to give that can't stop still notion.
Now, in the ordinary dance work in those days here, the drummer would have a bass drum and a side drum and nothing else. No cymbal work hardly at all. When I come back, I was the first one in Australia to use the hi-hat. I was the first one in Australia to produce the wire brushes, which you use on your side drum. I was the first drummer in Australia to use the temple blocks, round red things, and in different sizes. There's 5 of them. Now, there's 3 things that have never been seen in Australia before that I introduced here in dance work.
In contrast to the advertisement, Ern Pettifer was candid about why he took up the saxophone.
I was playing in the orchestra at Her Majesty's Theatre and a pantomime came on and they wanted a saxophone in it. Well, I'd never played one in my life, but it was worth another £1 a week, and boy, a quid in those days was money. So I told them I could play a sax. So they left me one. I soon learned to play it and I was given me £1 a week. Well, these 2 maidens came to the show and they heard me play. They asked me would I like to go into the dance business. That's how I started.
That was an American recording of Virginia Blues by Ladd's Black Aces in 1922. Australians who hadn't had the opportunity to go overseas were learning about jazz and dance music through records. Dave Meredith was the trombonist with a leading vaudeville stage band, Lynn Smith's Royal Jazz Band.
The first time I can remember was jazz, which I used to wear records out to get the what's name was Miff Mole and these Miff Mole and these molars, that's right. No, 5 pennies.
Yeah, Red Nickel and his
5
5
pennies.
pennies. A lot of you blokes in the dance world in Sydney and the vaudeville people and that.
Yeah.
You all used to know about jazz and listen to these.
Oh, I listen to records, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Well, of course, you had the old wind-up gramophone in those days. Red Nichols and his 5 pennies, and Miff Mole and his molars, and different ones, and there was, they were the main ones I used to swat and listen to this trombone player. And he used to, the breaks, you know, because in those days the band would go along, and the band would stop, and the saxophone, whatever the case might be, see? And the trombone would have a break. Well, I used to get that track and practice till I got the what's name, see?
This is Red Nichols and his 5 pennies playing Riverboat Shuffle.
Then I listened to trombones, and every trombone in those days was a raucous sort of a hard tone. So I decided now, why can't a trombone get a tone like a cello with a vibrato? You know, if you play a straight note on a violin, it goes beep, but if you get it's a sort of vibrato, doesn't it? Well, I practiced, and there's only a certain positions on the trombone, especially home positions, you must do it. And I practiced that and got this vibrato. Then I think I was the first one to kick it off. Later on, I had trombone players and Tommy Dorsey and all that mob uses that vibrato. because it could have been done as like, for instance, somebody might think of something here and somebody thinks it over in America, but it was mostly straight trombone tones in those days, no vibrato, see?
Yeah.
And it made a song, if you playing a sob thing, you know, tear and that, when you come up and you hold the note and you get this little vibrato, made it sweet, see?
Did you do it with your hand?
With the hand.
With the hand.
No, not the lip, the hand. A lot of them do it with the lip. Yeah, I never practiced that one, and I never had rings around my lip like a lot of players in those days.
Yeah.
Because America uses a non-pressure system, but I had a semi-non-pressure.
What did you think of Frank Coughlin as a
A
trombone?
very nice trombone, Frank. But I was in at the game before he was. You know what I mean, as a young fella. But we branched out in different lines. Frank kept on the dance game, and I went into vaudeville.
Yeah.
Because, well, I was a showman as well, you know, and we used to see, I suppose there'd be 60% them and the musicianship as far as the band's concerned. Even Lynn Smith couldn't read a note of music. When we'd rehearse a new number, we'd all play it, but I could read. Arthur Koenig could read. Paul G could read. Sammy Cope couldn't read a note of music, the drummer. But we'd play it, and Lynn had a marvellous ear, and it doesn't matter what key you went to, we'd play it.
Ah.
Oh, it wasn't even one C and F and G. I mean, it was 3 flats, 4 flats, 5 flats, 5 sharps or anything.
And you found that you were able to lug things pretty
Well,
well.
oh yes. Well, you see, that's what I say. I had this concentration as a young bloke for listening to a cello work, and I always say that the trombone was the cello, and the dance work was the build-up of counter melodies and things like that. You know, it was in my mind in those days, because there was no orchestrations. See, in 1920, 1919, even, all there was piano copies, and they introduced a violin part, and there's no arrangers in those days. All you got was your arrangements from the records you slotted up, you know, and what you could put in your own parts. And the trombone part was an umpire part in those days of any, even in vaudeville it was just a fill-up part, you know, build up. But when the new style of music come in, the trombone played a good backing all the time and lifting and bringing in the rhythm and intermediate parts, you know, to fill up the chords. So then the parts were written out. We got these parts written out for us. And then with our own interpretation and a little bit of filling in part, it made the thing sound marvellous, same as any band is playing today, you see. In those days, mutes were all the rage. The wow mutes.
Yeah.
I introduced a thing I used to use for, instead of what's I used to use an ordinary glass, a crystal glass. You know.
And you introduced that?
Well, yes, I was the first one to use that glass. I used to use hard-eater hats over it. But I used this as a wow and so you could talk like a turkey gobbler sort of stuff, you know what I mean?
Sort of a bucket, maybe.
Yeah. And being a crystal, or a glass near to a crystal, it used to give that ring with it.
Lynn Smith's Royal Jazz Band, a high-voltage crew of musicians who tumble into gay and gladsome jazz with an artistic finish. At times they are dreamy, but never draggy, and they make a chop suey of the foxtrot, whilst retaining time and melody. Their grotesque trombone warblings and waltz oddities are the real thing in stimulating, seductive jazz. Lynn Smith, the pianist, develops tremendous motive power, and the trombonist Dave Meredith presents a slithery-footed, inebriated trombone, which joins in the happy hysteria led by the reckless saxophonist Paul Jekyll, shrieking with delight and giving an impersonation of an educated turkey gobbler. The drummer, Sammy Cope, smites out right and left amidst his noisy appliances. The violinist, Arthur Koenig, fiddles with zest, and the whole effective combination is spectacular jazz.
In 1921, a 17-year-old trombonist named Frank Coughlin came to Sydney from Glen Innes, New South Wales, determined to make his name in jazz. Frank Coughlin, in the interwar period, became one of the most important and able jazzmen and dance band leaders in Australia. Coughlin was one of 5 sons of William Coughlin, Shire Clerk of Glen Innes, and conductor of the municipal band. The 5 sons, Frank, Jerry, Charles, Jack and Tom, all became adept at brass instruments. From the beginning of his days in dance bands, Frank Coughlin was dissatisfied with simplistic trombone parts.
So I looked in the paper every day again. I found this job in the Herald, and I saw the magic word jazz coming up again. And this time it was for a jazz band in the northern suburbs called Milburn's Orchestra, a dance orchestra. That is what the sole content of that band did, was play these little dance tempo things, you know. So I never got very far, but I did stick to the part that I had to play. There was never any orchestrations came out of any involvement or any difficulty. It was very simple. One sheet with a verse and one chorus for the trombone, which was written with a very simple sort of bass and like a cello part of a bass note. You know? So no difficulty. It had seldom got a melody. If you were lucky enough to be given a chorus while you played the tune. I started to improvise. I got sick of this deadly trombone part, and I started to improvise, and I thought it was a syncopated version of a couple of fellows that I'd heard, you know. I shifted to live at Rose Bay, and I came home one night from a job at North Sydney, and I was accosted by two fellows who came over and said, "What have you got in the case there?" And I said, "A trombone." They said, "Oh, we're just what we're looking for, a trombone player. Where do you live?" And he was a pianist. His name was Ernest Barbier, and they wanted me because anybody that had a trombone in those days was, made. Because the trombone looked upon as a jazz instrument. He said, "Have you heard a band at the Tivoli playing called Lynn Smith's jazz band? Stage jazz band, vaudeville jazz band, see?" And they never played for dancing that I know of at all. That was the big thing in jazz. It was a sight to see as well as to listen to, and all the weird sounds that went on were part and parcel of this jazz, and it excited them to see this, figure out, play the tunes of the day and jazz them up. The trombone player also did a thing that was already Harry Larson had done it in the pit of the orchestra. It's called the laughing trombone. Well, Larson got hold of it, and he learned to laugh, which is a way that you get the instrument combined with the use of the slide. You blew into it, but you gasped into it. You blew the note, but you also you did it like that. You didn't hold on to the note, you did it in gasping crotchets. He said, "Can you laugh on the trombone?" I said, "Oh, no." I said, "I wish I could." He said to me, "I'll let you hear a trombone player." He came down on Monday. Well, I got the shock of my life. He put on a jazz record, first one I ever heard in my life, but it was a record of a band called the Cotton Pickers. Now that was a Dixieland outfit of the early vintage of the white jazz. I'm telling you, this was most important. This was my first link with jazz, and it was a big link in America with jazz, white jazz, because it had Miff Moe on trombone, which was the greatest white trombonist of all time, in so much as he was the greatest innovator. He was the first pioneer of white jazz trombone playing, and he took the trombone from a tailgate thing that was innovated by the New Orleans jazzmen. As good and as original as that was, Miff took it like Goodman took the clarinet later on, put it right up there, you know.
This is the Cotton Pickers with Miff Mole playing Way Down Yonder in New Orleans, recorded in February 1923.
So I said, oh, I must buy a machine. I had no machine. She said, yes, well, when you do, I'll lend you some of the records. I said, well, that's good. From that, I got my real love and inclination to do nothing but play this jazz until I mastered it. I used to play the gramophone, then I'd try and play along like I heard Mowgli. I copied the phrasing that he did, and in the ensemble passages and the other instruments I played like he did in between, picking them up. So anyhow, we played a few dances around there at White City and up around Vaucluse and Rose Bay. And that helped. But as the big moment came, this band opened at the, or were going to open down at the, called a Bondi Casino. And the fellow Bill Jones had the band, and he was looking for a trombone player. I heard, but unfortunately it was too late. They'd already practically chosen their trombone player, who was a professor with a trombone at the conservatorium nowadays. But he had no clue about jazz. I went and haunted Bill Jones' place. Took a lot of talking, salesmanship, for me to convince him that he would even listen to me. Somehow or other, my very manner or something got through to him. He said, oh well, I'll have a listen to you. I went this night, anyhow. It so pleased him and the rest of the musicians that he said, right, we'll give you the job. And I got the job. £10 a week, which was a ridiculous salary thing for a nobody, or even for an Australian musician. We never heard of those salaries before, but the Californians had opened at the Palais Royal, and that's what brought the money out for me to be able to pay money to anyone they could get.
From the end of World War I to 1923, Australians had muddled through with often hazy notions of what jazz was, learning what they could from records and from the few musicians who'd been overseas. The arrival of the first American jazz band in 1923 opened a new period for jazz in Australia, which we'll continue with next time.